Today on Locked On Knicks, we play a new game. Is it something? Is it nothing? Next on Locked On Knicks.
You are Locked On Knicks, your daily New York Knicks podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Hey, what's up, guys? You are Locked On Knicks, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every single day. And I wanted to remind you that today's episode is brought to you by our friends over at PrizePicks. Is sponsored by our friends at PrizePicks. Download the PrizePicks app today and use code LOCKEDONNBA and get $50 instantly when you play $5. You don't even need to win to receive the $50 bonus. It's guaranteed. PrizePicks, run your game. And your favorite podcast now has a newsletter. That's right. You can read Alex and I every single day. We're introducing the Locked On Knicks daily newsletter, the one stop for ultimate team and league coverage, delivered right to your inbox. Sign up for free now at LockedOnDaily.com. That's LockedOnDaily.com, and start your day with the all-new free Locked On Knicks newsletter. But who is talking to you every single day? I'm Gavin Schall. I am the Saturday host of the Locked On NBA podcast, and now a generally credentialed NBA media guy. I think that's a real position. He is Alex Wolfe, editor-in-chief of The Strickland, the greatest Knicks website in the whole wide world. You can check them out on all forms of social media at thestrick.land. Remember to subscribe to Locked On Knicks on YouTube. Hit that notification bell so you don't miss an episode. Be sure to do the same on your favorite podcast platform of choice. Alex, we are playing a new game. It is something or nothing, and we start with the Knicks starting five. Is this something or nothing that the Knicks starting five cannot defend? So far, they have the fourth worst defensive rating of any lineup that's played at least 50 minutes this season. That is out of 27 lineups. Out of all those groups, they have played the most total minutes, so you cannot say it's an insubstantial sample size. What do you say? Something or nothing?
I'm going to say could be something, but I'm leaning towards nothing. I think it's just a small sample size right now. I think we're seeing, obviously, they're working through the struggles of having Karl-Anthony Towns at the five without any viable backup plan for that. You know, it's Jericho Sims, and, you know, maybe you believe in that. Maybe you believe in him, you know, in the rim defense numbers and stuff. I did say, like, in the game recap for yesterday, I'm more in on that than I previously was. I've not been the biggest Jericho Sims booster. I don't think either of us have been, if we're being fair. Like, it's just, we were both kind of just convinced he's not really an NBA player, and he's been doing all right. But I don't know that I really buy him as like a guy that I would want out there as like a rim stopper for 20 minutes a night or something. The guy that I could see doing that somewhat credibly is Precious Achiuwa, who's going to be back soon, and then Mitchell Robinson in January. So, you know, to say like the starting five can't defend, I don't think they're fully incapable of defending. I think that there are just certain scenarios where they can be exploited. I think that that's like teams that have really strong pick and rolls, teams that have really speedy guards that can get by OG and Mikal. I think that we've seen that those are points that can be exploited with this defense and without having a credible backline defender back there, because like Cat has his moments and he's getting better. He was giving up like 80% at the rim early on this season. I think that number is getting down to, I think it's down to like 60 something percent in his last like 5 games or something like that. Which is great. You know, still not fantastic, but you know, it's better. Gets it right to around like league average, which I guess it will work, you know, considering how good his offense is. But really, it's just like, I don't necessarily know that this starting five is going to get that much better on defense. That said, does it matter? Because they're like 7th as a team in net rating right now, I believe is the number where they're at. So if you're just flat out scoring way more points than the other team, and that lineup is one of the best offensive lineups in the NBA, then, you know, all you have to do is score more than them. So if you're among the worst at giving up points, but you're among the best at scoring points, it evens out in the end. That said, they're going to need a lineup that they can kind of clamp down with come the playoffs. If I was a betting man, I would say that lineup eventually by the end of the year includes either Precious Achiuwa or Mitchell Robinson in it. So we just haven't really seen it yet. So I'm going to say this, to me, is nothing just in the sense of I think it's fixable, but something in the sense of like, yeah, I don't necessarily know that this starting five right now is ever going to be elite at defense, just because of the fact that Cat at the 5 is just suboptimal if that's your goal, is to just have a defensive stopper lineup out there.
Yeah, I'm going to say it's something in that I think this will be the thing that ultimately stops the Knicks from winning a championship. And maybe it's a little too bold to talk championship given how the Knicks have played so far this season, and for that to still be the measuring stick. But you know what? Once the Knicks made these trades, once they give up whatever 5-6 first-round picks for Mikal Bridges, once they give up Julius Randle and Dante DiVincenzo to a lesser degree than the 5 first-round picks for Karl-Anthony Towns, like that kind of became the standard. And I do think they can get to a point where they are an above average defense. And I think it's going to be particularly telling to see like how much Mitchell Robinson Cat are we getting? Do they want to trade Mitchell Robinson for a wing that can give you more versatility? And I think that is probably ultimately the direction the Knicks will go. I'm kind of coming off my stance that we're going to see a lot of Mitch and Cat together, just because to your point, the offense is so good with Cat and Cat looks so unlocked on that end. I think the Knicks are of the belief that the highest ceiling version of this team is with Cat at center. And we've seen teams with Cat at center be solid defensively, like under Chris Finch before they got Rudy Gobert. Minnesota was a fine defensive team. They just played a very different style than what the Knicks are playing right now, where they had Karl-Anthony Towns at the level, blitzing more often than not. They were kind of like the ultimate chaos defense in the last 5 years in the NBA feast or famine. Didn't totally translate to the playoffs when they lost to the Memphis Grizzlies. And if I'm remembering the year correctly, that epic 7-game series. But I do think the Knicks can get to average and maybe even slightly above average just because OG Anunoby's that good. To your point, Mikal Bridges has been trending in the right direction. Karl-Anthony Towns, with the caveat that it's against weaker competition, has kind of been trending the right direction. But I still just see a guy who like physically is just not mobile enough to be where you want on defense. And like there are like, I think it's maybe less because of lack of effort, but there are still those Julius Randle moments where he's just frozen and someone is expecting help and he's on the opposite block and not getting over. There are moments on the offensive end where he's like rushing in for a layup and missing and like either staying back and complaining to the ref or just not fast enough to get back up the court. And like that stuff, whatever it is now, 9-10 years into his career, I'm just not sure is fixable. And if the Knicks take the trade-off and start Mitchell Robinson at center, which if they do, I think this is like potentially like a top 5 or 6 defense in the NBA. Can their offense still be good enough that they could be title contenders? I'm not quite sure about that. So I'm going to say this is something, not in the sense that I think they are a bottom 10 defense, but something in that it could hurt the long-term trajectory of the team.
Well, I'll tell you what, maybe starting Mitchell Robinson helps a little bit with this next thing that we're about to talk about. Actually, the next 2 of the points could potentially be that we're going to talk about here could potentially be helped by Mitch's return. But interestingly, you know, when the Knicks were one of the best offenses in the league, but not making a lot of threes, it was because of Mitchell Robinson. And there's one player on the team right now that's not having the best year from 3 at this particular moment, and that's Mikal Bridges, who is shooting 31% from 3 this year, but has been elite from the mid-range. So, Gavin, you pulled these stats, 47% on corner threes for Mikal Bridges so far this year, which is the 74th percentile for wings, but 17% on non-corner threes, which is the whopping 0th percentile. So he's really cooking. And then he is 61% from mid-range, which is 93rd percentile. So Gavin, do you think that Mikal's tough above the break 3-point shooting is something or nothing?
Yeah, so I'll go into both of these. I think it's something. Unfortunately, at this point, I made the quote unquote bold prediction that he'd shoot under 35% from 3 this year, and right now that is looking like steamed broccoli on the spiciness scale, given that he's a full 4% below that. I think there's a real mechanical issue with the shot. I think 10 games into the year, we can say that it's not just a cold stretch. I do think there have been some encouraging signs. That second game against the Nets, he hit at least 1 from above the break, maybe 2, and he looks really good to me in transition, right, where it's just like kind of a catch, pitter-patter 1-2 step into a shot, and he doesn't have too much time to think about it, which is encouraging and kind of suggestive to me that this might be a mental issue. So I think it will tick up a bit, and I think he'll level out at like 33 or 34%. But the guy who was like a high volume, high 30s 3-point shooter, which I think the Knicks need him to be, maybe not in the regular season to sustain an offense that's been, to everything we've talked about, fantastic so far this year. But I think for them to have a great playoff offense, he has to be who he's been throughout his career, which is a high 30s 3-point shooter, which I think is important because I don't think it's a thing. I just totally forgot the name of the game. I'm saying it's nothing that he is a 60+% shooter from mid-range, I shouldn't say nothing, because it's an incredible start to the year, and it's the one thing that's kind of keeping him afloat on that end of the floor. But when you look at his career numbers, which are more so in the 40s in mid-range shooting, like previous years, this year's 61%, the past 41, 48, 41, 51, 49, 36, 35, right? Like, he is a great mid-range shooter. He's not Kevin Durant. So I don't think that's sustainable. And if that's not sustainable, he needs to shoot high 30s from three to be the guy we need him to be on offense.
Yeah, I guess I'm going to kind of ride the fence again. I'm kind of in between something and nothing. Like, it's something that we're now, a sixth of the way through the season, roughly. Not a little more than a sixth of the way, and he's shooting this poorly. But I do think that, I don't know. I still I look at his shot, and it doesn't look like there's a hitch anymore. It looks like they're just not going in. You know, they're just wildly inaccurate from up there for whatever reason. And it does sort of feel like one of those things where once it clicks in the way that the corner threes have clicked, he'll probably start making them from above the break again. Now, he might already be pushing too far gone to really like elevate that percentage up to like 37% for the entire season now at this point. But you know, if he inched it towards like 35% by the end of the season, sort of similar to what we saw like when Julius Randle was so cold from three to start last year, and then just gradually was inching it back up. And we saw like by the time that he got hurt, I think it was up to like 32.5% or something like that. And, you know, you would look back then and just look at the numbers and just be like, wow, he really shot like crap, you know, last year. But it wasn't actually. Like, if you just kind of look at the story of the whole season, he was phenomenally cold to start the season and then figured it out as time went on. So I think maybe I'm just thinking too much with my Tibbs brain, but I'm kind of waiting on that 20 game mark and take temperature there in 6 games from now, see where we're at, you know, see if he's starting to make them by then. And then maybe once we get past that point, that's a quarter of the season, that's where things start to feel a little more real. You know, then maybe it's the time to call it something rather than nothing. I'm kind of with you on the mid-range shooting. I do think eventually that's going to come back down. So like if that's going to go down, the 3-point shooting does have to come up. So that would be the most concerning part of this whole thing to me. But Gavin, we're going to also talk about Josh Hart. So don't want to leave out another one of the top role players on this team and his pick and roll ball handling ability, and also talk about the Knicks rebounding in the next segment and if we're worried about that. So we're going to do that in just a moment.
But first, we want to tell you about our friends over at FanDuel. Get ready to tackle the NFL action with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook, because right now new customers can bet $5, get $150 in bonus bets if you win. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place live bets on the NFL all in one place. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. I'm looking at that like Knicks-Wizards line halfway through the first quarter. The Knicks are down by 4. Only favored to win by, I don't know, about like 15 points. I'm like, I kind of think the Knicks are going to blow out the Wizards. If I just thrown some money down, I'd be a rich man right now. So just visit FanDuel.com to join today. A reminder, you get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. That's insane. And it's FanDuel.com. Never waste a hunch and make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. All right, Alex, something or nothing. Josh Hart, hyper efficient, if low volume, pick and roll ball handler. This one was inspired by a tweet from our friend Prez, #FreeHuckPorty, #FreePacom on Twitter. And then he said, this was a tweet. He said, guess who? #small samples, but it matches the eye test given his secondary ball handling role. And it shows on there that this man is 98th percentile in terms of points per possession as a pick and roll ball handler, including passes. I correctly guessed that was Josh Hart because he's been killing it in that role the last few games. Relatively small sample size, only 14 field goals attempted out of pick and roll actions where he is the lead ball handler. But Alex, do you buy that as kind of a tertiary weapon for the Knicks and a way to punish teams who try to hide their worst defender on Josh Hart?
I mean, I definitely buy that he has the ability. I don't know if I think that a sizable hat tip needs to go to Karl-Anthony Towns, who I can't see who those passes are going to and who took those field goals. But if I was a betting man, I would say at least 80% of those, if not more, have probably been Karl-Anthony Towns.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, if that's the guy that you're running pick and roll, pick and pop with, like, yeah, he's going to make you look real good when he's playing as well as he has this year so far. That's not to say that I think that means that like Hart's just purely being buoyed by Cat there, but that's certainly going to raise your points per possession number when you have a guy who's shooting as efficiently. Like, I think Cat still at this point is shooting for 50, 50, 90, on the season, which is crazy. So, you have a guy that's that efficient. It's going to make you look good in the pick and roll. That said, if I'm playing the game of something or nothing, it's definitely something. It's something that he can do, and it's good to have in your back pocket. Like, I think what we're seeing, for all the talk that we, led the show with about the defensive struggles of this team, I think we're seeing it really come to fruition just how crazy dangerous that starting lineup can be on offense. When you have, Jalen Brunson, who can do all the things that Jalen Brunson does, and he's leveling up as a passer right now. I feel like he's making some reads out of pick and roll and just in general that I feel like are more advanced than anything he's done on the Knicks so far. You have Cat, obviously, who could score all three levels and is like a bull in a china shop driving downhill right now, which is super useful in the pick and roll. You have OG and Mikal mostly living in the corners, but showing really good acumen for like dribble drive, kicking it to each other in the opposite corners. So then what's Hart's role? And it seems like Hart's role is going to be on possessions where he's not initiating. He's going to be the cut man, that kind of sets that double screen with Cat up top, or, sets the first screen, and then whatever is just kind of like just waiting for his moment to either accept the ball to shoot a three or just like make a wild cut to the hoop once everybody gets distracted and forgets about him. And that's how he's been so efficient so far to start this year, and is basically ending like every game shooting like 70% right now. But the other thing with him is that, if you want to get the ball out of Brunson's hands and say, one, just, maybe give him a little rest, but two, just kind of try to throw something at the defense that they're not necessarily expecting. Like, Hart can do a lot of different things. And so, like, I'm totally buying it that this is a real skill for him. I don't know that's something I would want to go to every single possession of the game. And I don't know that like those super duper gaudy numbers are going to hold up necessarily for the whole season, but I wouldn't be surprised if he's averaging like a very passable, like 1 to 1.1 points per possession in pick and roll by the end of the season, and probably in like 75th to 80th percentile or something like that for like guards, wings, whatever. That would not surprise me at all. I think that he definitely has the ball handling ability and definitely has like the smarts and the passing acumen and everything to play that role really well.
Yeah, I think to your point, I saw a stat today. Cat right now is averaging 1.5 points per possession as a pick and roll finisher, which is the equivalent of shooting 75% from 2-point range, which is just insane and maybe not super sustainable. But I think this is definitely something. Right now, we've kind of consistently seen the Knicks' first or like option 1A and 1B is either Cat or Brunson, depending on like what time of the game, who's hot, like yada, yada, yada. Option 3 is then basically whichever Knick has a small guard on them. And outside of the Celtics, like, there's going to be like one crummy defender, usually the point guard, on pretty much every other lineup in the NBA that you can go at. And we're consistently seeing like OG Anunoby, like, put that guy in the rim and dunk. We're seeing Mikal Bridges, like, that's part of the reason he's been so efficient in mid-range, like, because he's getting guards on him and he's just raining mid-range jumpers over him and he's elevating. And it is like Kevin Durant where he doesn't even see the contest. Or we're seeing Josh Hart attacking the pick and roll, which is super effective. And what's really fun, if you want to add another element onto that, is like down the stretch of that second Nets game, they had Brunson screening for him. And the defender, like much like you see like with Steph Curry being such a powerful screener on the Warriors, does not want to leave Jalen Brunson. Josh Hart turns the corner. The two plays I saw him do it, he got like a short little like turnaround jumper that was pretty much wide open because the defense was scrambling to get after him. And then he hit a lob to Jericho when like he forced the big to step up. So that is like a fun little wrinkle, and I'm hoping the Knicks keep going to it. All right, we'll get in one more of these before moving on to segment 3. The Knicks, I miswrote this one. I wrote so sorry if I misled you and you were looking stuff up. I wrote Knicks as a bottom 10 defensive rebounding team. The stat is Knicks as a bottom 10 offensive rebounding team in the NBA. They currently rank 23rd in the league in offensive rebounding. Of course, that has generally not been the case under Tom Thibodeau. They were first in the NBA last year. They were third in 2022-23. They were fourth in 21-22 in offensive rebounding. Of course, the major caveat here is no Mitchell Robinson, who is arguably the best offensive rebounder on planet Earth. So maybe it's nothing and as simple as that. But I'm still curious because the way that Cat's rebounded on that end of the floor, which is, I think, pretty sure he has the highest offensive rebounding rate of his career, if not close to it. Obviously, you still have Josh Hart. You have guys that are super physical, like OG Anunoby. Someone who's super long, like Mikal Bridges, Jalen Brunson, who's a bulldog and can win like those kind of long rebounds. I'm a little surprised the number is that low, especially when Jericho Sims is coming off the bench, and he's actually doing a great job on the offensive glass. So, Alex, do you think that's something, or do you think that's kind of small sample size, non-Mitchell Robinson theater?
I'm actually going to throw something a little different out there. I think one of the reasons that the Knicks are not getting as many offensive rebounds this year, because this number
because they're making all their shots.
Yep.
Yeah, that's a good example. Yeah, I got that.
Because this number is just hard offensive rebounds. Yeah, it's not just offensive rebounding rate. So I mean, if you just look, they're number 2 in the NBA right now in true shooting percentage, behind only the team that just suffered their first loss tonight, the Cleveland Cavaliers. So the Cavs are shooting 63.9% true shooting as a team. The Knicks so far this season are shooting 60.9% true shooting as a team, which is just bonkers, quite frankly. So, I mean, that plays into it, I think, because then if you look at their offensive rebounding percentage, they're kind of middle of the pack. They're 23.8%. So that's, I believe the way that number works is, an estimate of the percentage of available offensive rebounds a player grabbed while they're on the floor. So extrapolate to the whole team. It's basically just saying the 24% of the time they're getting an offensive rebound. Now that puts them right in line with the Boston Celtics, who are right next to them, like 0.1 percentage point off. That actually puts them well ahead of a team like the Cleveland Cavaliers, who are at 20.4%. So I think what we're seeing is like the reason that raw number wise they're lower is just because more shots are going in. And like when the Knicks have been the best offensive rebounding teams in the league, or one of them, it's because, like, for example, 2 years ago when they were so good, it was that they were like, or actually, I guess last year they were technically better, but you know, when they've been really good at that, it's just a result of the shots aren't going in. So Mitch gets a lot of opportunity to get offensive rebounds. Maybe that continues once Mitch comes back, and then he's just gobbling up so many offensive rebounds that the Knicks start scoring 150 points a game. And their rebounding rate goes to like 50% or something, their offensive rebounding rate. But yeah, I think that pretty much explains it to me. So if we're talking about, you know, if we're thinking this is something or nothing, I'm going to go with my chest and say this is nothing. I don't think they have an offensive rebounding problem. I think that they've been getting them when they need them. Whether it's Josh Hart, whether it's Cat, whether OG Anunoby, I feel like has been getting a good amount of offensive boards lately, and resetting the offense and then generating another good look. I think they're doing all right. And as long as that rebounding rate stays like at worst middle of the pack, I think they're in good shape.
Cool. I'm with you. We have a few more of these, including to finish up, if the Knicks have a transition defense problem. And the last one is a fun conspiracy theory I saw on Twitter about Ariel Hukporti. Nothing nefarious, just kind of about his playing time. We'll get into that next on Locked On Knicks.
But first, we want to let you know about our friends over at PrizePicks. And PrizePicks is the best place to get real money sports action. With over 10 million members and billions of dollars in awarded winnings, PrizePicks has made daily fantasy sports accessible to all. You just pick more or less on at least 2 players for a shot to win up to 100 times your cash. Run your game all season long on PrizePicks. And my favorite thing about PrizePicks, other than the fact that you can win up to 100 times your money, is multi-sport entries. I think multi-sport entries are one of the coolest things that you can do on any daily fantasy app, and it's something that I think is exclusive to PrizePicks. You could set up a thing where you pick the over-under on Jalen Brunson points, the over-under on Tommy Cutlet's touchdown passes this coming weekend. You could do goals scored by whoever's on the Devils or Rangers. I don't really know hockey, but you can make like a multi-sport entry, which is really cool, and have 3 different things to root for in a single given night or a single given day or whatever. I think it's one of the most innovative things that any one of these apps offers. And PrizePicks also offers weekly promotions that can lead to big payouts like Taco Tuesday. Each Tuesday, PrizePicks discounts select player projections up to 25% to provide even more value to your lineups. So if you want to check it out yourself, download the PrizePicks app today and use code LOCKEDONNBA to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. Again, download PrizePicks today and use code LOCKEDONNBA to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. PrizePicks, run your game. All right, and we're back in, continuing to talk through these I keep wanting to say buy or sell, but it's something or nothing this time. Either way, same general.
Similar theme. Yeah.
We rebranded the same thing. I don't know. We're trying to find one that's our own. Buy or sell is PTI's thing. We got to find something that's our own here. Anyway, so Gavin, do the Knicks have a transition defense problem? They currently allow 21 points per game in transition, which is actually sixth best in the league, but they allow 1.13 points per possession, which is just 17th in the league. Personally, I feel like this goes up and down depending on the opponent and the activity level of said opponent, which maybe could be said for every team in the league. But how are you feeling about that? You think it's something or you think it's nothing?
So I think this is something with the caveat. I did not expect the number to be that good in total transition points. And that goes back to what you were just noting on the offensive rebounding. You know what really helps your transition defense? When you're putting the ball in the basket a lot, and there isn't a lot of transition and there isn't a lot of long rebounds. So that's good. But the efficiency number, which is honestly not as bad as I thought, I think is something, because this has been a big theme for the Knicks, like starting with the Bulls game, going back even a little bit before that, but really these last four games, just an inability to get matched up in transition. You are constantly seeing miscommunications where two guys are on one player. Far and away the biggest offender is Karl-Anthony Towns, where he has been randling out against the Wizards and against the Nets, where I said it earlier, so I don't want to totally relitigate it, but like a lot of times, like he will catch the ball as a trailer, and when he's not shooting a three, he's like rampaging full speed to the rim. And for someone who's been hyper efficient this year, he has not been incredibly good at the rim. And it's mostly those plays where he'll catch it, one dribble. A lot of times it's Euro step, inside hand, righty on the left side. He'll miss it, and then he'll either fall or he'll be like stuck under the basket. Half the time he'll randle and complain to the official instead of getting back. And the Knicks are 4-5. Like we saw Jonas Valanciunas get like an easy putback layup because Cat was defending. I counted 3 different times in the first half where Cat didn't get back and it led to a bucket. It happens with Brunson too. I think it's less so because he's complaining and more often because he's getting hit pretty hard, or he tries to sell contact under the rim and he's falling down and the Knicks aren't back. Even when they are back, again, they're miscommunicating. And other teams now, even off of makes, are pushing and treating it like a fast break, and the Knicks are not totally settled, and they're getting easy buckets that way. And I understand against the Wizards and the Nets, it doesn't necessarily matter. Obviously, the Knicks won those games anyways, so maybe I'm making a mountain out of a molehill, but I'm going to say this is lightly something, and I think better teams in the league, like those buckets will matter more than they will against teams the Knicks can kind of just say, all right, but we're gonna be up by 20 in 5 minutes anyway. So what does it matter? So I'm hoping the intensity picks up against better offenses.
Yeah, I'm going to say lightly something as well. I do think that we've seen them take certain matchups too lightly and just take certain games too lightly. And usually it's towards the beginning of the game, and then they get kind of punched in the mouth by these transition opportunities. And then, we see if they're able to rebound from it or if it ultimately dooms them. And hopefully they're just able to tighten it up and just care the whole game. I do agree with you. I think there has been a little too much, both on Brunson and sometimes on Cat, of kind of gesticulating and being like, come on, I got fouled, whatever. And like those guys are also quick to hit the deck, to try to sell the foul, which can harm you in transition. So I think as the season goes on, one, they'll start getting more foul calls because it happens every single year, like clockwork, that the league says, we're just going to let them play through it more. And that happens for the first 20 games of the season. And then inevitably these refs just get tired of getting yelled at by the players and they cave and they start calling more fouls. And then everything balances out, which will happen at some point. But beyond that, I just think that they'll tighten up eventually. Like Tibbs is going to get tired of that. At some point, he might make a statement and sit one of them, just to be like, hey, like you want to keep costing us points on the other end, like by complaining down there, like then I'm going to, let me complain. Don't you complain. Like you see me, I'm in the refs here all game. Like you don't need to do that. I'll do that for you. You go get back on defense. So we'll see. But again, we're nearing the 20 game plateau, which is a big one for Tibbs. We're also nearing Precious coming back, which again, I don't want to put everything on Precious as far as like improving the defense, improving the rebounding, improving all the things the Knicks have lacked in a bit. He's not Superman, but he does a lot of the things that the Knicks occasionally have needed so far this season. And I really think that if he plays like he did in preseason and like he did towards the end of last year, like he might have a real role on this team of like 20 to 25 minutes a game and close some games potentially, because I think that he's going to give you that like offensive rebounding, the defense, all the things that you want, just all that hustle stuff. So we'll see how that ends up going. Gavin, I'll let you introduce this final one though. We got a little conspiracy theory. I don't have any tinfoil handy. Otherwise I'd make a hat.
Oh, that would have been fun.
Yeah, it would have been, but instead I'll just keep wearing my Knicks hat, I guess, but whatever. What's going on with Ariel Hukporti? Do we think that the Knicks are suppressing his value?
I do want to just an addendum for future episodes. We should have tinfoil hats on hand at all times, and maybe like once a month do a conspiracy corner. I think that'd be fun. But anyways,
hey, I'm down. Let's do it. Let's start this month, whatever,
right,
or December.
Corner.
Let's mark that down. We'll put that in the ether.
Okay.
So we remember.
And people here in the comments will put the Knicks conspiracy you have that you want investigated, and we'll make it happen. All right. This comes from Kermit at Fat Kermit on Twitter, and he says. My thoughts on why Ariel Hukporti has not been seeing the floor and when we will continue to see minimal minutes for the rest of the season. I'm not going to read the whole thread, but essentially the summation of it is that he thinks Ariel Hukporti is really freaking good. The Knicks know that he's really freaking good, and they want to pull a Deuce McBride, and which his words, I don't know if this is what actually happened with Deuce McBride, but essentially artificially suppress his value by not playing him and then get him on like a Deuce-esque like 4-year, $13 million contract and then say, haha, like you're our starting center now. You're playing 30 under Tibbs. You're playing 45 minutes a night. This is a blast. Do you think that's something, or do you think that's nothing? And maybe Tom Thibodeau just really likes Jericho Sims.
Yeah, I'm kind of going nothing. I think he actually does like Sims. I mean, maybe the front office is like twisted his arm a little bit and been like, like if you can avoid it, maybe don't play him as much because like we want to try to lock him in. We didn't think he would be quite this good, or else we would have tried to get him on like the Kolek deal, but we didn't think that far ahead. And now his agent wants more money or whatever. But realistically, like how much leverage would Hukporti have to begin with? I don't think much, because what is he going to say? Like, oh, I'm going to hit restricted free agency or something in like 2 years' time. Like, I think he's going to want to stick around here and prove himself that way. We've seen that time and time again. Young players do seem to really love this team, like, and they're genuinely heartbroken when they leave. Like, I think Immanuel Quickley, for all the stuff that we projected onto the Immanuel Quickley era, I think that he actually quite enjoyed playing here. RJ Barrett, it seems like, definitely did. Obi Toppin maybe is the only one where it's like, I don't know if he really enjoyed it that much, but Grimes was enjoying it until he forgot how to play basketball. It's just, I think that I don't think that they would be holding this dude back if they thought like, hey, it's going to give us more chances to win basketball games than Jericho Sims to have him out there. I think Tibbs just genuinely likes Jericho. And, honestly, it's like I said before, I mean, I didn't necessarily think that Jericho was going to be an NBA player. I thought this was going to possibly be his last year on the team. Like, I thought that he might have even been included as like trade filler in one of the deals that the Knicks made. And he's played pretty well. I still have my issues with his jump timing and some of that sort of stuff, but in general, he's been solid. I think that he's putting together some okay minutes. I think that Hukporti, maybe more than anything right now, especially if you believe the numbers about like defensive field goal percentage around the rim and stuff like that, I think if anything, Hukporti is just kind of giving you more on offense now at this point, which makes him a little more viable on both ends. Like the fact that he has that explosive dunking ability that's not like Sims does too, but it just, I feel like his timing is worse, and Hukporti just seems to have a little more of a bag as far as like looking a guy off to get a clear lane, that sort of thing. And Sims just doesn't have any of that. Sims is just like straight line drive, like I'm going where I'm going, and that's it. And it's just like run, jump, dunk. That's like the Sims playbook on offense. And I think you get a little more creativity out of Hukporti, which is maybe what the the big selling point there is I think ultimately, though, it just kind of comes down to what we go through with Tibbs all the time, which is just he wants you to earn it. And, we're kind of seeing Dadier go through the process right now where we're seeing him sort of earn a little bit of a role. But I'm sure that once Deuce comes back, that's going to go down quite a bit, if not completely evaporate. And, I think we're seeing it with Hukporti, where it's like he has a good stretch in a game or two, but then didn't have the best stretch during garbage time the other day. And I think Tibbs is going to hold that against him. And that's going to make it harder for him to find minutes. And, also we don't know what practices look like. So we don't know if Hukporti's getting yelled at for certain stuff that he's still adjusting to in practice that maybe doesn't show as much in the game, every single game or every single time that he's out there, but maybe it's stuff that Tibbs is seeing that he's like, oh, I don't think you're ready. Jericho's been here. He knows what the deal is. You don't quite know this, that, or the other coverage yet or whatever. I don't know. I don't want to make it sound like I'm defending Tibbs too much either, because I do think it's kind of baffling that he is giving Dadier a real shot lately at 15 to 20 minutes. And yet it doesn't seem to be offering the same grace to Hukporti, who I think has looked better to this point, or at least filling more of a purpose that the Knicks need at the moment. But whatever, it is what it is. My hope is just that by about midseason, they start trying to get him a little bit more playing time, because in reality, they did just convert him to a full NBA deal, and they have him for one other year at rookie money after this. So unless they really think that he's going to, in 2 years, play himself into a $20 million a year contract, what are you worried about anyway? I don't really buy the conspiracy theory.
Yeah, I'm with you. I'm going to say nothing just because this is what Tom Thibodeau does with rookies. I'd push back on the Buck-Home thing a little bit. I kind of want him to play a little bit more, the second Nets game where Josh Hart was at 46 minutes, Mikal Bridges was at 45. OG was at 40 and Buck-Home was at 11 when he was out there, and he was defending well, and he was he makes seemingly 60% of the threes he takes, and yet Tibbs doesn't play him. Tibbs is not comfortable playing rookies. And to your point, Sims is offensive rebounded, and he is statistically protected the rim better than anyone in the NBA, pretty much, ironically enough, other than Ariel Hukporti, who's right there with him. I think they have the top 2 marks in the entire league, which is crazy when Cat is pretty much the worst in the league. If you could just like Dragon Ball Z fusion dance them into one person, we'd really throw Mitchell Robinson in there too for good measure. We would really be cooking. But no, I'm gonna say this is that Tom Thibodeau does not like playing rookies unless they're in the midst of a really good game, which is the one time we saw Hukporti against the Nets play 30 minutes and Sims play 18. So I think there will be days, I think there'll be games, but then Hukporti takes one shot that foul line jumper he took, and Tom Thibodeau's pulling out his last 3 hairs, and that's it. So I think it's more likely that. I am really excited about the future with Ariel Hukporti. Anyways, that is it for this edition of Something or Nothing. Tomorrow night or Thursday morning, we'll be back with our Knicks Suns recap. I'm really excited. I'm going for the first time as credentialed media covering the Knicks, so that'll be cool to get to. Maybe I'll ask Josh Hart about his pick and roll usage. Maybe I'll ask Tom Thibodeau about the Ariel Hukporti conspiracy and get kicked out right away. I don't know. We'll find out in 24 hours. We'll talk to you then on Locked On Knicks.